I do about random.
As I sat down to record this newest episode, I realized that in the previous episode I neglected to introduce myself. My name is Don and I'm a retired funeral director. I started this channel because I'm stuck at home. Thank you for tuning in. Today I would like to talk about the jobs I had when I was a teenager. In 1979 I got my first job. I was an usher at Northlake Cinemas in Tucker, Georgia. I tore tickets, worked the concession stand, cleaned the auditorium in between movies. Another duty I had as an usher would be to change the marquee. We had an outdoor marquee. It stood probably about 40 feet tall, I would say. The marquee itself, it had a platform where you could stand and pull letters off. We had 3 cinemas. Now the bottom cinema was number 3 on the marquee, and if the movie was changing there, that was quite easy to do. You just walked back and forth along the platform, pulling down the letters, putting up the new title of the movie along with the show times. Cinema 1 was at the top, and if the movie was up there, you would have to pull the ladder up behind you, hook it over a bar at the top, and then climb up that ladder to get to the letters so that you could change them. Now the ladder itself had rubber grips on the bottom so it would not slip, supposedly. One of those feet were bent, so you had to be somewhat careful if you were working on the top or even in the middle marquee area. So that was always a little bit concerning. Thankfully, nothing ever happened. What we would do for the title change, we would write down on a scrap piece of paper the name of the movie and the show times that was already up there. And then below that we would write the name of the new movie, and we would coordinate the letters to see what we needed to carry up there. Sometimes we would miscalculate and would have to go back inside and get more letters, but usually we were able to accomplish this without too much difficulty. We had to be careful not to change the outdoor marquee too early in the evening, because people could get confused and think a movie that was premiering the next day was actually playing that night. We usually had new movies on Fridays, so Thursday night around 9:30, 10 o'clock, which was about when the last movies would go in, we would start working on the marquees. And again, thankfully, no one ever got hurt. The ladder never slipped on us. But that was always an interesting job to have. Our popcorn popper was not in the popcorn bins like you see in a lot of theaters today. It was upstairs, and we would pop about 40 bags at a time. Each bag was about 3 feet tall, about 1.5 feet wide. And as the popcorn bin would empty, we would take a bag and dump it in there and let it warm up. There was a warm air blower. Underneath the popcorn bin was a warming plate where we would melt the butter. I worked at that job from 1979 until early 1982, although during that last year I was more of an off and on employee, and honestly I was more off than on because I had gotten tired of the job itself. I graduated high school in 1981, and after graduation I took a second job early in the morning at a place called Mrs. Winter's Fried Chicken. I would work the breakfast shift I was on the grill preparing sausage, bacon, eggs, and other breakfast items. We would bake our bacon in the oven, one pan or maybe two pans at a time. And then as the orders would come through over the loudspeakers, not only would I be cooking the items, but I would be assembling the breakfast sandwiches. I did that for a few months until I left for the Navy, which I had joined in 1982 under the Delayed Entry Program. I left for boot camp around June of 1982 and spent 3 years on active duty and then 3 years in the reserves. But that is a topic for another video. And getting back to the movie theaters, as I said, I started in 1979, December to be precise, and the reason I remember that after over 40 years, actually almost 50 years now, is because right after I was hired, we were anticipating the opening of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That movie, of course, was highly anticipated, and it was a huge hit, needless to say. There had been talk for years about a Star Trek movie or possibly a reboot of the original series. The thing I remember most about this movie, aside from all the anticipation and the vast number of sellout shows that we had, was there was a little boy. He had come with his mother, and he was probably about 5 or 6, and they came in for one of the evening shows, which by that time they showed up, it had sold out. So when they asked for tickets to that movie, the cashier had informed them that the show was sold out, and he started crying, and I felt bad for him. And I may have misheard him, because you know how people try to talk when they're crying and it makes it hard to understand. I think what he said as he was crying was that he really wanted to see it, but what I heard was he really wanted, and then something that rhymes with bit. And I couldn't help but secretly laugh inside. And since the sellout number was an approximation rather than an exact count, we went ahead and sold he and his mother the tickets. So he was able to see the show. A week or so after Star Trek, we had Kramer vs. Kramer with Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, and that movie was also very successful. It was so successful, in fact, that we had it for quite a while, and the joke among the staff and management was we had had it so long that Dustin Hoffman's face was burned into our screen. After 1980, that was 79. In 1980, March, I believe it was, we had Coal Miner's Daughter, a biopic of country singer Loretta Lynn. That one starred Sissy Spacek and Tommy Lee Jones. The thing I remember most about that movie is it seemed like every reject from the casting call of Deliverance had come down from the mountains of North Georgia to see that movie. That also was extremely successful. Most of these movies I'm going to mention were very successful. But as I said, it was a very unusual demographic that came to see the movie. Now, one of our jobs as ushers was, after the movie ended and the auditorium emptied, we would go in and try to pick up the biggest trash, popcorn buckets, drink cups, piles of napkins on the floor. And once all the big garbage was picked up, we would go down the center aisle with a broom and sweep all the popcorn that had ended up there, sweep that off into the aisles. It was a quick cleanup, but the thing I remember most about cleaning up after that movie was there were quite a few cups that we would pick up, and initially we would think, oh, someone didn't finish their soda. No, that was chewing tobacco spit, and that was revolting. In April of 1980, we did not run this movie ourselves, but one of our fellow auditoriums, if you will, one of our other chain theaters, Perimeter Mall in Dunwoody, Georgia, they had a sneak preview of the movie Excalibur. And the thing about this sneak preview was studio executives, including the director John Boorman, were in attendance. Me and a friend of mine were able to go see that, and I actually saw John Boorman. I didn't meet him, didn't talk to him, but I was able to find out who he was. And of course, that also was a decent movie. It's one of my favorites. In June of 1980, we had The Shining with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, and that movie ran for a while. Now, when I saw it, I thought it was a little bit boring, but over the years I have developed an appreciation for it. Later on in June, we had the movie Brubaker with Robert Redford, Yaphet Kotto, and a very early appearance in an extremely minor role of Morgan Freeman. He played a prisoner. Brubaker was the warden. He played a prisoner who, under the previous administration, had been confined to a cell for an extended period of time. That was also a good movie. I took my mother to see that one, actually. Then, in July of 1980, we hosted a sneak preview of the movie Caddyshack. And of course, one of the perks of me working there was I got to see free movies all the time. So I was able to attend this sneak preview, and it was a sellout. And the audience, we were laughing hilariously the whole time. That movie was so funny. You can watch it at home and get a chuckle out of it, but when you're in a crowd like that, laughter just seems more contagious, more infectious, more energetic, and my goodness, we were dying laughing practically the whole movie. In August, we had the movie Xanadu with Olivia Newton-John, Michael Beck, and Gene Kelly. Now, this movie did not do well at the box office, and the only reason I mention it is because it had musical numbers. It was a musical, one of the few musicals that I do care for, the other one being Yankee Doodle Dandy with James Cagney. And the reason I like that so much is because James Cagney, goodness, I can't talk today. James Cagney was known primarily for tough guy gangster roles. So his turn as a song and dance man was a departure from his stereotypical roles, and I enjoyed that very much. But Xanadu, it had one musical number, and I tried to be present in the auditorium every time it came on screen. That was the song Don't Walk Away by Electric Light Orchestra. I absolutely loved that song, so I tried to catch it every time I could. In August also, a couple of weeks after Xanadu, we had Smokey and the Bandit Part 2 with Burt Reynolds, Jerry Reed, and Sally Struthers and Jackie Gleason, all of them reprising their roles from the original. And that movie, that is probably my best memory of that summer. We had so much fun as the staff of the theater. Crowds were fantastic. Sell-out shows constantly. The friendships I formed that summer with my best friend Rob from high school, a gentleman named Tony. He was from a rival high school, but we didn't hold that against him. There was another girl there. I think her name might have been Mary. Bear in mind, this was almost 50 years ago. One night we got it into our head. Now I remember what happened. She had mentioned that her brother boasted that their house had never been TP'd. Now, if you're of a generation that doesn't know what that is, TP stands for toilet paper. And what we would do is you take a bunch of toilet paper and you throw it over the roof of the house, back and forth, in the yard, in the trees, so that the whole house and yard is just streamers of toilet paper. So the next day she came into work and she made the mistake of mentioning that her brother had said that we did not do a very good job. So naturally, we took that as a challenge and went back the next night and did it again. And the next day at work she said, okay, my parents say that's enough. So we did not do that anymore. But I'm sure that taught her a lesson. But again, that summer with Smokey and the Bandit Part 2, that was just one of the best memories of my working life. We also had the romantic film Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve, Jane Seymour, and Christopher Plummer. And that was a movie about a playwright who, through reasons I won't go into, fell in love with a picture he saw in a luxury hotel called the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, Michigan. And he was so in love with this picture that he was able to figure out a way to go back in time and actually meet with her. And that's all I'm going to say about the movie. If you haven't seen it, it is well worth checking out. It is not the usual Christopher Reeve Superman type of role. And then finally, the one I remember after that was a Goldie Hawn film called Private Benjamin, where she, I won't say accidentally because she knew what she was doing, but she wound up in the Army, and basically it is a fish out of water story. And she is able to survive boot camp and grow in her Army career. And it's just a story of growth and discovery. It's a romantic type of comedy. And it was enjoyable if you haven't seen it. That one starred Goldie Hawn and Eileen Brennan as her company commander. And then we also had midnight movies. Now these were movies that aired Friday and Saturday night. We called them midnight movies, but they really started about 12:15, 12:20. The admission was a discount admission. It was $1.94. The 94 cents coming from the sponsor of these midnight movies, a radio station in Atlanta called 94Q WQXI. I don't know if they're still on the air or if they're still using those call letters, but that was the reason for the 94 cents. If you pulled up front in your car that had a 94Q bumper sticker on it, you got a free ticket. And I had one of those, even though I would get free admission anyway. But sometimes it was fun to pull up and see one of my co-workers come out and give me a free ticket. Now, at that time, the most popular midnight movie was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But we did not have that. We had one called Rock and Roll High School, starring the Ramones, a musical group, and P.J. Souls, who had a role in the movie Halloween, and Mary Warrenoff and Paul Bartel, which were known for their appearance in Roger Corman movies. Another midnight movie we had at various times was Alien. Now that had come out sometime, I believe, early '79. I'm not real sure. But it was a good midnight movie. Boyfriends would bring their girlfriends, and they would sit there in the dark And then when a scary part would come up, sometimes the boyfriend would grab at his girlfriend to frighten her. She would shriek. People would laugh. But that was another popular midnight movie. We also had one I hated, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. And that was a movie starring Diane Keaton and a very young, almost unknown Richard Gere. She was a teacher that at nights and on weekends she would go clubbing and try to pick up all these different men. And the thing I hated most about that movie was it was 2 hours and 15 minutes long. So by the time the movie started, let's say at 12:15, 1:15, 2:15, 2:30. So the movie would end around 2:30, the theater would empty out, and then we would be left to lock up. Now, we did not have to clean up the auditorium after that. We had a cleanup crew that would come in the middle of the night or early in the morning and do all that cleaning. But it was just exhausting, waiting around till 2:30, 2:45 to get out of there. There was one more that I wanted to mention. I have to find it in my notes because I can't remember it off the top of my head. Please bear with me. The final movie I wanted to mention was The Warriors, starring Michael Beck and James Remar. And that was a good one. I always like going in there and watching the scene with their fight against the baseball Furies, and then later on their fight in the bathroom at Union Square. Another one we had that I remember was A Clockwork Orange, which I didn't care for that a lot because at the time I viewed it as extremely violent, and I was worried about some of the more unsavory customers maybe getting inspired to start trouble. Thankfully, that never happened. But one thing that we would do, not necessarily after midnight movies, but during the week, after the last show would end, which was typically around 11:30 or so, we would open up the game machines, empty out the quarters, and there was one game in particular that we could click up free games on because the the sensor for dropping the quarters, it did not register. So if you click the switch, you could get free games, but it wouldn't register on the game itself. So the company didn't know that we were using it to get free games. These games were rented. We made a small profit off of them. The majority of the quarters, the money earned, would go to the arcade company, but the game we liked to play was called Wizards of War, WOR, and I got so good at that, we all did, that we could play it to the very final level, which was called The Pit. All these monsters would be running around the screen shooting their fire breath at you. You would shoot back at them, try to kill them before you got hit by their fire breath. Earlier levels had walls and barriers and places you could station yourself for the best advantage. But that final level, called the Pit, it was just a big open screen. No place to hide, no place to run. And we all got very good at that game. So much so that when I was in boot camp, after boot camp, I went to something called Class A school, where I learned my Navy job, which was Operations Specialist. But the school, the base where the school was, Fleet Combat Training Center, Dam Neck, Virginia, they had an arcade with the Wizards of War machine. And if you got high score on a particular game that month, it would rotate from month to month, you would get a free t-shirt. Naturally, when Wizards of War came up as the game of the month, I rang up the high score, and I had to wait all month to make sure no one else beat me, but I did get my t-shirt. Now, they did not have a Wizards of War t-shirt, I forget what they gave me instead, but it was kind of nice to win a prize. So that was my first couple of jobs in high school, the movie theater and Mrs. Winter's Fried Chicken. And there was a time, very briefly, maybe about 3 months or so, and I don't remember exactly what year this was. I did work as a janitor at Shallowford Hospital in Dunwoody, Georgia. My assigned duties were to clean the elevators, clean the stairwells, empty the trash in those areas, and then maybe once a month we would go into the operating rooms and give them a deep clean. We would get up, clean the overhead lights, clean all the hard to reach areas. So I did that for a while. I did that and the Mrs. Winters. I had bought a Volkswagen Beetle. My car payments were $79 a month for about 3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years. So I took those jobs to pay off my car. So that's a quick, well, not really quick, but that is a review of my high school jobs. Now I would like to introduce a new segment. This is called English is Weird, in which I will highlight some of the unusual characteristics or vocabulary of the English language. Now, for people who have to learn English as a second language, my hat is off to them. So I hope you enjoy this segment. It will appear on and off throughout my videos, so please enjoy. And thank you once again for checking out my videos, and I hope you'll come back to see more. English is such a difficult language to learn, and I'm going to give you a few examples of why that is. For example, you have the word dozen, and then you have a similar word, frozen. Now, someone looking at those two words would think dozen and frozen, or dozen and frozen. The plural of goose is geese, but the plural of moose is not meese, it's moose. And the plural of mouse is mice, but the plural of house is houses, and not heis. So, I applaud those who succeed in mastering English as a second language. Thank you for tuning in to this new segment. I hope you enjoy it, and I plan on having more examples in the future. Thank you. Y'all have a blessed day.